On air. Awesome. So, we go through a bunch of definitions, identifying the different models that are going to be in use. Model element, author. We identify who the model manager is. Identify the scope of the modeling for the design needs. What's to be modeled. So we identify different things that we're going to actually place into the model, so we get some scope covers there of exactly what's to be modeled, what's not to be modeled, so we can kind of know what to expect.
Do you guys get into level of detail on any of those things?
We do. We have two different ways that we've handled that. One is a very explicit, written out. These are all the things we're going to model, so whatever detail we're going to model them. And we've also used that matrix that I guess is a Penn State developed.
Yeah.
That's also in the AIA document,
yep.
P202. So we've used that as well with varying degrees of success. So then we get into electrical and plumbing, what we're going to be modeling, what we're not. Civil, other different kinds of systems. We talked about level of detail. What else we got? How design coordination is going to take place. We have the same thing for construction. So now we get into kind of the contractor scope and talk about the different things that are going to be modeled here. Who's going to be responsible for modeling them comes later. And may even be referenced in that model element author matrix. All right. What else we get into? Interior skin, framing, insulation, trusses, drywall. Same kind of thing again. Modeling these things, as-built models. Whole coordination process, what that's going to look like, how it's going to take place, how we're going to communicate, how we're going to share models, the coordination meetings we're going to have, dealing with clashes, clash views, clash detection, model distribution. Talk a little bit about shop drawings and how that gets incorporated into the models. Coordination sign-off drawings. So after we actually get through doing the coordination, there's a set of sign-off drawings that are used to basically kind of end the coordination process and kind of start with installation. So installation should be based on those signed-off drawings. Identifying colors to be used just so there's some consistency doing the coordination process.
That list of colors, what did you use? Is that something you just came up with internally? Is that based off of anybody's standards?
I don't think it's based off of any standards.
Because we've been actually working, or I've been working at trying to help create a standard, that everybody can use.
Right.
So it's actually pretty close to what I had actually.
Okay.
Maybe good get together on that.
Sure. Did you find any sort of industry standards?
Nobody really has an, it's like different industries have their own standards. Like, you'll go to, or different areas will have their own standards. I know a lot of the union areas of the Northeast, they have their own standards for electrical. They have their own standards for plumbing, what the color is supposed to be. I think some of the cities or some of the zoning boards have standards as well. So they're all different, which is kind of annoying because some of those colors are actually crossing over. You're going to have in one, the plumbing will be yellow, and then in the next region or next area or person, their plumbing is going to be their electrical.
Right.
So that could create a lot of confusion and a lot of conflict.
Yeah, it would be really nice if it was consistent.
And I've seen a few that have maintained the consistency on certain elements, like the electric cable tray. That's exactly what I've been using. That's orange, and for some reason everybody seems to agree on that. But yeah, again, that's something I've been working on, and I'm trying to get it to where we can build this in and estimate it easily within Revit by sharing a library, a color library that's specifically for this, design materials. My issue is I need to talk to somebody who's more well versed in
How do you assign? Do it through templates?
Yeah, you could do it through a view template. Probably the easiest way to do it. That way you don't have to mess with it. Like, I mean, depending, like most any on the MEP side, you really don't care about the visual aspect of it. So you can actually model some of these colors in from the very beginning when you're working in a model that's very colorful. Because aesthetically speaking, it's irrelevant to what you're doing. You know, architecture side, obviously, you're not going to sit here and have orange walls or things like that. But on the same side, architecture really doesn't need this much coding because your class detection, where you're looking at architectural elements, it's more of how it affects or how these guys affect it or vice versa. Not you don't have to separate. Yeah, you don't have to separate because nobody's going to confuse a wall with a conduit. Right. It's with that or a ceiling element. But it's pipe versus conduit. Exactly. Or HVAC diffuser versus light. Right.
It depends on who's handing you your MEP model.
Exactly. I mean, it really does.
Because if you're using systems, everything that we have on our MEP models, you can apply the user set. In fact, if you use systems, the systems themselves have graphic overrides. Those are quite simple.
Right. Exactly. And like I said, going in and doing it manually is simple. I'm trying to, similar to the shared parameters I mentioned before, I'm trying to make it easier for everybody so everybody can agree to this. The biggest issue most people have is I don't have time to go back and color everything. I don't have time to color everything as I go. But if I can make it more of an automated system by introducing a library, where all you got to do is from a drop down real quick and apply it, that's going through assigning material, adjusting the material to match the color. If you can create a universal library system within Revit, which I've already done, I just specific elements that I need to fine tune. Then I can you can estimate that to everybody here. Just have a copy of this, open up your material manager, import it in real quick, and that's it. Now when you create an element, you have from the drop down menu.
Oh, you're talking about you yourself creating
the material in order to when that's the easiest way to color an element is using the material. I mean,
I'm kind of lost because
Well, I think you're talking about when you're developing a model completely in-house, right? As opposed to taking a model from different design team members or even subcontractors and dealing with that, which you would typically do, at least I would typically do, using Navisworks to just override colors.
Well, see, that's what this is actually, so, okay, I'm working with Raul on an MIT model. I have a library of colors that follow these standards. I provide that to him. As he's modeling, he's assigning these materials to the element.
For my drawings and for our design, we have a set system. We have our own language, and it does carry from the get-go. It carries all colors. For example, if you're doing waste anesthesia gas disposal piping, if that's in the system, that system displays according, and it's ruled by the system up at the very top.
Yeah.
The piping system's got the graphical definitions. All the duct systems have all their graphical definitions. So when you're working, you're not selecting anything. You're just placing pipe and duct in the system where it belongs, and it displays accordingly.
Well, and I totally agree. The thing is, those colors in that language you have doesn't match this list. That's what I'm saying. My idea or my concept is to kind of help make a uniform system to where everybody's colors match. Because you send those your model, we're running class detection. Well, I don't necessarily if somebody else is working, say you're just doing mechanical, and I got somebody else doing electrical or plumbing, then all the colors need to match, because if you send me something that is assigned, like you said, pre-assigned already, green, or that's disposal, well, how do I know that the electrical side doesn't have something that's green also? And then when I'm running class detection, I'm looking at these colors, then I'm going to see two green pipes. I don't know if it's yours, I don't know if it's his. Whereas,
but you can, in that sense, you can use, you were talking about parameters and everything, you can use systems to color yours too.
Well, that's what I was trying to add. That's what I was talking about. It's getting to a point where everybody's using the same, same template, essentially, for these colors. Now, it's not something you have to do in every project. Like I said, we would set up, a list like this. Everybody will be on the same page, regardless of what office you're in. and then this is just how you would use you would rearrange your color schemes. Like I said, once you have it set up, you don't have to do this every single time. If you have a method of decimating colors throughout all your models, that's it. That's how you use it.
Well, what about inside of Navisworks? Are you able to, so you can do selection sets or flashing sets, specifically search sets or dynamic, right? So if you're able to, type in something that will qualify as the electrical cable tray, where it does a search for that whenever it links any model up, and then it automatically links with that color. Now, I know you can do that with flash detection. Can you do that to manipulate the color so then, no matter what gets linked, as long as you have these search sets, which you can share with other groups too. So you can say, just like we used to share plotting, right? You can share this search set with everyone, and then when they import their model, it color codes everything. It makes an assumption that whatever's been linked in has got to have some naming. I mean, cable tray is obvious and ductwork is obvious, but there might be other stuff that might be a little more difficult.
I think what you're looking for is probably having a conversation more along the lines of what you model or what the designers model. So when they hand it over to you, you can discuss, okay, this is what you're going to get from us. And it's organized this, and these are the properties, these are the parameters that we use. So like Dan is saying, you can map out something that will convert what you're getting from anybody else into that, and it's not necessarily trying to push it back to how people actually design and what they use, because they've been using it for years, and okay, this is how I modeled it. If it's properly modeled, you don't need to add any tasks to them when you can do it automatically with a mapping.
I agree.
But I'm suggesting that I don't know for sure that it'll work. I'm not trying to do it. Even in flash searches.
Even if it does work, the biggest issue I'm seeing there is, like you said, you're setting up these search sets based on a naming convention. Right? And like you said, certain things are going to be no problem because, Revit system standards, cable trays are cable trays, all different. But if you start modeling, components on your own, then you need to make sure that everybody, that the person who's going to be running the class or who's going to be creating the search sets knows, okay, I'm going to have this components that are called this, right?
Right, which is one of the reasons people might need to modify them and share them back with the group, saying this will take care of our stuff.
Well, actually, this is where I said the idea of how having something universal in the library was to avoid that. And it actually fits with it, because like I said, it would just tie in. You wouldn't really have to change anything you do. All you would do is change the colors on.
Yeah, I would think that would be a tough sell for a designer.
But even if the colors aren't changing that drastically, it's not like we're telling you,
I'm telling you, when you convert a firm to just Revit from CAD, you jump through so many hoops at the beginning, trying to get everybody to understand that, yes, this is doing whatever you do right now better. And once a year down the line, 2 years down the line, you get past all the graphical part, you're kind of married to that. Because you will get resistance to any other changes that you make, because that's just the way it is. And people get used to working when they're designing, architects developing the floor plans. Everybody gets used to how they do their work. And going back and changing something like that, people are going to resist it. They're just not going to do it, and it's going to throw your company standards all up in arms. So middleware is the part that I'm suggesting you look for a way so you can convert what you're getting from everybody else into what you need to work. Because it's just, I'm telling you, if you're going to run into resistance, not everybody's going to change. Okay, we're going to work with Harding now. We use this. We're going to work with Turner now. Oh, use the other template. And nobody's going to maintain 5 different templates. Do the same thing. Nobody's going to maintain 3 different libraries just so they can play nice with everybody else. What we need to do is get to, because there's a big issue. You talk to the architects, you know what you take from the architect, what objects you take from the architect's model. What do you take from the MEP designer's model? Are you taking the ducts that the MEP designer puts in, or are you putting putting in that your subcontractor is modeling. So why are you trying to force all the way back there? Try to figure out what you use and try to see if you can convert from there. Different libraries, I mean, the amount of parameters that we handle on MEP side, try to coordinate 3 disciplines and have all the different objects schedule on everybody else's discipline and all that management on one library just because of parameters, and you start to add another, I'm telling you.
Also, the finish objects, I understand that definitely, but the finish of some of these elements is already built in. I've seen it in some of the MVP elements, certain pipes, certain, stuff where they already have a finish parameter, a material parameter. So it's not something that's necessarily adding in, and the Autodesk would be, I don't remember the extension of K yet. The Autodesk has K, I think is the name of the material library. I mean, but when I say library, it's nothing like the family library. Material library is nothing but a text box, essentially. That's all it really is, because there's nothing really to manage. You would set it up.
Oh, it's a material library.
Yeah, it's not a physical library of things. That's what I'm saying. It's not as, I can see your point of view, and I can see what you're saying, but it would just literally be a question of saying, okay, I'm doing this hardened project, I'm going to use these materials. And it's already, like, the way Revit sets it up, it already has, you have the list. When you open the material manager, you have the standard universal library that has everything under the sun, and then you have separate ones under the bottom. One, under title, whatever. We'll actually say this because we're getting really off track.
Yeah.
We'll say this for the further discussion, but I actually have examples. Like I said, I'm still fine-tuning certain things to make it easier for everybody. But it's not as a daunting task as, I guess I'm coming off as. I understand your point, and I totally agree that people they get used to something, they love it, and they don't want to change it. There's a reason AutoCAD standards have been around for so long, and everybody uses them. I mean, I've seen them both in this day. AT&T alone has 2 binders worth of AutoCAD standards, whether you're using AutoCAD or not. Whenever you give them anything, they have to have all those standards. Like everything, of course, line weights, colors, layers.
The national CAD standard, all the standard layers everybody uses. Does anything like that exist for BIM?
No.
And it gets so much more complicated than BIM. Shared parameters.
No, and I definitely agree.
And there is a need for that kind of standardization.
There is, but I'm going to also say that it's a very different technological world that we live in today than when that stuff happened for CAD standards. So today, whenever possible, what we should look for first is more of this automation process where the computers organize it the way we need it organized rather than us having to have a standard. So we only use standards when the computers aren't capable of automatically organizing that information for us. Another thing, and I know we don't want to get off topic about this, but maybe we can talk about it later, but materials will be an issue for designers because we use those materials very extensively.
And this is where I was going. That's why you have the 2 separate ones. But then this will really only apply to the engineering discipline. Because like I said, in architecture, when running the class detection, it's fairly obvious. There is no confusion as to what's what. I mean, the biggest issue here when running classes is mechanical, electrical, and structural. You're not really too focused on the architectural. Of course, that's important. You want to know when it punches through a wall or if it's punching through, half the wall, half the ceiling, at that intersection. But those are obvious. Those are easy to keep track of without having to standardize a color system or anything like that. And like I said, bro, we can discuss this later at another meeting, and then I'll bring in the examples so you can see what it is that I'm trying to,
One last thing for you to consider is that since we're talking about material library now, there are thermal properties in material now too. And for our for our mechanical piping and production and everything else, that's going to be the preferred way to choose.
Infrastructural. It's an asset now, so you can run your analysis.
Yeah.
Careful with that.
Okay, well, that'll be a topic for discussion. Remember that at some point or another, we'll sit down and have a discussion on this. Sorry about that, Chris.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I'm totally okay with it. So we get into, again, the as-built model, use of the model from the construction side, spatial coordination and kind of the precedence that's going to take place and what So information exchange, how that's handled, how we're going to share models. We're going to specifications showing an FTP site. We're uploading it, downloading files, and archiving. This is actually a different version than the document that I was thinking it was. So I think there's more to it, but I unfortunately don't have it. Here. That's what we got so far. Like I said, I think there's more, but I just don't have it. What's in yours? Not sure. Let's see what's here. Either way, that's fine.
All right, this is our, like I said, at some point, somebody had this created. This is mostly out of our California, our West Coast region. Again, like usual, we start off with the table of contents and how to break everything down. In the introduction, basically, we have set up for project information and then the collaboration team. Here's basically where we list out who each contact is within each firm, who's kind of mechanical, the electrical, plumbing, who the contact is, structural, who the contacts are within our organization as well. Then we move on to the modeling plan. The model manager is essentially who is in charge, who's in charge of the model and at what point. As you can see, during the design phase, in this particular case, I'm the one that's in charge of it during pre-construction estimating before it actually breaks ground. Once it breaks ground, we switch over to our field BIM coordinator, and then he handles a lot of the class detection that occurs as the construction is going on. We're running class detections, making sure that everything is still, copacetic, essentially, or running, pretty well. And then again, it's divided up because, maybe I'll handle it at the schematic design phase, and somebody else will handle that during design development, or somebody else will handle it during construction document phase. So it gives you a chance to kind of break it down within our organization. So the client basically just will know who to contact if there's an issue. Same thing with the architects or any of the engineers. Those are who to contact directly as far as at what point in the project. So that way we don't have them communicating with say in this case Chad when he's not even involved in the project at this point. And then, of course, these are the responsibilities of what the person, of each person during those phases. I've got this responsibility matrix in which models go. And, of course, level of development, just a quick breakdown of what's what, so people involved can know what's going to be expected of them.
How have you found that to work out? I mean, everything I've seen on level of development is so kind of genericized. It really is, that's even a word. So generic, I should say, that, it's not always applicable to the different disciplines. You kind of need more specificity when it comes to, say, the plumbing components or the structural components or the architectural components. How are people trying to incorporate that on the component level or the system level with more detail?
For us, one of the things that we're looking at is the idea of having 200.0, 200.1, 200.2. And everything still falls within the 200 category, but the 0.1, 2, or 3 really is about logistics.
Okay.
Because when you start talking about level of detail, who gets what when, the 200 level is too broad of a level of development to define the logistics. So if you just have a single column that's 200 and you start listing out all the items, you're going to get these arguments about who gets what first, and I'm going to need this, that, and the other. So adding 0.0, 1, 2, and 3 allows you to organize it so that people can get what they want and get it all done within the 200 level before moving on to the 300 level, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so we have a matrix, by the way. So
okay,
we have these. So we would have lots of rows, and we would define items on those rows, and then we would have additional sub-columns under each of the 100, 200, 300.
Okay.
And we, of course, would not get involved as architects in the 400 or 500.
Sure.
Additionally, we have maybe with automation in the future, some of that happens. communications.
Hey, Jack, I'm curious, when you spell it out that way, is this language that's included in the contract?
What we've talked about that. So just to clarify, what I'm suggesting is what we've been working toward, not what we're doing on all of our projects. So when we look at this, we refer to it as a level of development matrix. And so it's an Excel spreadsheet, and it even has multiple sheets on it that helps define some of the information. But that's what we're striving toward in order to solve the logistical issues. Because in a lot of ways, as soon as you start describing the level of development and start trying to define everything, you realize very quickly you've got logistical problems here if you don't do something more than this.
Can you give us some examples of what that looks like from a 200.1 to 200.2, 200.3?
What do you mean? Succession of?
Yeah.
It's not necessary. You can have some items. I can't think of like anything off the top of my head, but you can have items that would be in the 200.0 and 200.1 column that would be fully developed for 200, and they just don't have logistical issues, so it's a non-issue.
Okay.
Right. But then there'll be other topics where you might have a row where it goes back and forth what sub-level of development portion it's in when something gets developed so that the different disciplines can, so I cannot explain that very well, but I'll try and bring one of ours that we have with an Excel spreadsheet and maybe show that and be able to so it'll be a little more visual and everybody will understand.
Well, I think that would kick off some good dialogue because I just feel like it's an area that's not defined very well. So if people have already made attempts to define it a little bit better, I think we could all learn from that.
Yeah, definitely. We have a matrix set up, but it's not to the level of detail that you're explaining where it breaks it down. Ours is more of a matrix based off of this, and it kind of breaks down a little bit, but not into the, like you said, 200.1, 0.2, 0.3, which is a lot more specific and would be a lot more helpful.
So it's what we're working towards is that based on taking the contract aside and really internally how we would run more efficiently. If I had certain inputs from what this will say and they have certain mind and they want it early on, like what's on,
Right.
we push those forward on the matrix. And then other characteristics could push off a little bit later. So then if the contract and the client, they say they want certain things at a certain point, then you can add that into all things being equal, kind of have this as efficient as we can get it at the time.
Right, so it definitely helps you work out sort of maybe the critical path on to get roughly in. And so there'll be, you'll be able to look at the level of development matrix within the 200 set, and you have some items that you have the entire level of development 200 to decide when you're going to do that.
Right, but at least you get a chance to flag if you're on the same page. Going to get
right. It's exactly. It's the type of chart that you want to be sure that if the whole project's going to use it, everybody should be very involved in reviewing it. Because if only one discipline views it and lays it out and nobody else really pays attention, that's not really going to help out. Ultimately, there's going to be a lot of problems created.
You got to get the buy-in. We went through that exercise where we had all the disciplines in a room, and then farms and okay, what do you need at a certain point? We'll write it down. What do you expect to give at a certain point? We'll write it down, and then we're starting to filter in and go, oh, okay, this is not going to work. Really, do that, and then try to capture that in.
Right. And sometimes that leads to adding additional rows. So forth, so that you break down what it is, what the minimum one discipline needs from the other, so you can get that logistics worked out.
Because for that item, I think this portion of it, right, put it aside for one, right, and actually they need the information to have to be processed.
Exactly. So you may be exactly, and that is very common for these items. Is that one of the engineers might work on it during 200.0, and then the architect adds something
just real quick, one of the ways we've done it is we have the columns would be the milestones in the project or a phase of a project, and then we'll actually list out CSI divisions to get more of a specific breakdown, and then in each little cell we'll put the number, level of detail, and then who's responsible at that point in the project for that particular part of it.
That particular phase.
Yes. The way.
Hey, Chris, real quick for the group, does anybody want anything more to eat? Because I'm going to let her take that out shortly.
I'm good.
So you won't come in here in about 5 or 10 minutes and take that around.
Then the next few pages is essentially just going through, what schematic design phase is for us and how we're viewing it and what we're expecting, the objectives, what role the model itself will take in that, at that point, responsibilities basically of who does what and when. Again, it does it for schematic design development and then construction documents. Then the next section is the analysis models. Basically, it's just stating, we've got to come to an agreement. It's a per project thing. Not every project is going to do a full analysis of mechanical systems, electrical, structural, anything like that. Energy efficiency, some will, some won't. But here we kind of break it down and say, okay, this is where we can discuss that.
Hey, can we stop on that for a second? How much, I'm just curious, being a structural engineer from, years ago, what the integration is now between using a Revit model to actually perform analysis. What are people seeing from the MEP side? What are people doing from the structural side as well as others, maybe lighting studies and that kind of stuff. Just kind of curious how much these models are being leveraged for that type of stuff.
Every time Autodesk releases a version of Revit MEP or an enhancement, we try to use it. We try to use it to perform energy analysis, but it's not there.
Okay.
A lot of the customizations that we need, for example, are not, let's say, very common example. You have glass, and you only have one type of glass for any phase, but you will have spandrel, and then you will have glass. So those are going to have obviously different values, different R values. You're going to have a different impact on the interior space. So it's still incomplete, especially by the time you develop a model with everything in it. Sorry, the numbers that you're going to get if you run the Revit and that energy analysis tool, energy modeling tool. Not
That engine is mainly for conceptual phase. Where all the whole design's not even fully worked out mapping, and you know you're going to have this percentage of those. And it's not as useful for real accurate results. It's really for, I got these two different design options, which one's safe and wrong.
Now, is there third-party software that you can use for that does integrate well with the Revit model, or
no? And that's the problem. There isn't. What's built into Revit right now is it says more architectural and more for the beginning. But you're supposed to be running the energy model and evaluating the energy model throughout the design process, up all the way through construction, and even further, so you can go back and compare.
So you should be sure and watch Autodesk 360 and BIM 360 really close. Try to maintain an account on there, because my guess is that you're probably going to see, whenever the real solutions first show up, that's where you're going to see them, and you may never see them at this point in a standalone Autodesk product, because they obviously would like to encourage us to move it in the cloud.
And integrate that way. We were having a conversation that time we met about that and how much trust can you have on not necessarily Autodesk, because I believe that they're a multi-billion-dollar company and they want to stay in business. So they are going to continue to develop the tools and provide us with something to work. The deal is the cloud itself is shaky at best. So everybody putting the information information back and forth and being able to rely on that data for that. I've seen that, like I said, every time they update software, they come up with new tools and new enhancements, but they're still far away from. A couple of toggles would help. You know, we try to run loads, and we're in healthcare, and the list that they provide is incomplete, but they don't let us add space types, for example. And customize and save as, or just duplicate and create our own template of space types. Could just, okay, this is this, assign that, assign that. By leaps and bounds, they get there, but they usually miss a lot of the little stuff, which would be very useful. I think from what I saw at AU, 3 years down the road, we should have a robust tool on the MEP side to work very well with that.
We're talking about like the different ventilation, air changes, and all that. You have to treat that separately.
Yeah, well,
yeah, that affects how their energy is being taken up.
For example, if you have surgery, an OR, and you have some of the exchange rate, air exchange rates per minute and so on and so forth, so you want specifically to put that in there, other information about the occupancy, the way they use power, so if it's connected to emergency, to this emergency circuit, you calculate the 100% capacity, all that, so you can just apply it every time. Just schedules and apply it to your spaces. Run it a whole lot faster. It's just not there yet.
And so they install it on AU within 3 years. It's going to be something that we're presenting kind of as a standalone system or something like Dan was saying that would be probably integrated with some other.
Yeah, I think it's part of their development cost. Cobble information together from the future meeting and what everybody else was saying and what they were presenting. And it goes in line, conversation I had with somebody, something well, put it this way, the idea comes in between idea, conception, development, and everything. It takes about 5 years. I've been hearing it, some of this for 2, so I'm giving it 3 years. I do. Well, I've seen it. The thing is, I've seen advances year to year. I have seen advancements that they are inching closer. Plumbing used to be the dog. It's a whole lot better. A whole lot. Not there yet, but getting closer. A whole lot more than they used to.
Good. Okay. All right, then we have, content plan. Again, this falls under what the model could be used for. Takeoff analysis, scheduling visualization, user agent energy analysis. This is the detailed analysis plan. It kind of ties in with the level of development and what it should be for what analysis type. What we're representing, what we use. Like you can see for quantity takeoff and cost estimating, level 100, this would allow for certain things. At level 200, it allows for a little bit more details, so on and so forth. By the time we get to level 500, which is the as-built section, then we actually have what it actually costs based on what was built and those are the records.
How much work do you have to put in to get the models to the point where you can do some of that cost estimating, quantity extraction?
Quantity extraction, I think at level 200, 300, where it had enough to, be able to pull good numbers. I mean, it's not just based on the model, it's a combination of the model and depending on what software you're using for that. We've been using a bio like this, and we're starting to integrate that one. They're very good at what they do. They still have some bugs to work out. A lot better than what apparently it was a few years ago, because I know some people tried it, Chris had mentioned it, they tried it a few years ago when it first came out, and it bombed horribly. Their latest versions that I've been working with are a lot better. There are some issues, especially with steel. Needless to say that we had 779 tons of base plates for steel columns, which is just a little off. And that's a glitch that they had in their system. It was a combination of the fact that the model was missing the weight parameter, but But even when I went back in and corrected that and added a weight parameter, what anybody was telling me was still 50%. Well, it should have been. Okay. So there's a glitch in it. But, we can still pull a lot of good numbers from things like interior envelopes, curtain wall, things like that. We get really good precise quantities. So like the combination of two things, the model and then whatever software you're using, they cost me. The design phase, coordination plan, all the general requirements that we talk about, where the origin point of each one is going to be, the tolerances, things like that. That way when we do the coordination, everybody's on the same page and everybody's doing the same. It's at the same point, and we don't have issues with, things being on a separate level that they should be.
So can you go back up to the origin point?
I mean, right now, this one is just generic. It's basically just saying that we need to be at the same point. Now, what's going to determine that point is going to be more like on a per project basis. Honestly, from what I've seen, using real-world coordinates based off of your topo or your site survey works really well. And I'm basing most of this, not only what I've seen and what I'm repeating as far as the future with things like 60 group. Granted, you can still just keep it all on 0, 0, and everybody will be fine. But I think you're going to get, if you actually go with a real elevation, things like that, you're going to get more accurate things when it comes to your coordination between your civil, your site work. I mean, at least for us, that's really important.
Yeah.
Logistically,
Let me break in there. So the problem though is, you're going to be working on some project that's going to put your project way up in the air. And so your accuracy and efficiency in a 3D program, if you're truly moving it, hundreds, thousands of feet above the 0D plane, that's not good for the project. So it's fine to take the levels and have them read that, but to actually move them up there is not a good idea for the overall project. And so if you're coordinating with civil, though, I think the secret is to pick a real-world survey point and let that be move the actual survey point and route it to that point. Then when you export, you always export to shared coordinates, which make that survey point 0, 0, 0. Okay. Civil always knows where to insert your stuff, and when you get stuff from civil, it should be a requirement that any DWG that they send that they make that same survey point 0, 0, 0, so you always know where to insert their stuff. Now, I don't know how that ultimately plays out with glue, but what's running through my mind is that you're going to have some projects you can get away with doing this on, but you are going to run into problems on some of your projects that won't be doable on where it is in the world. So it's going to be problematic. And I just got through having a discussion with, trying to remember who it was, but one of the Autodesk developers, one of the people involved, who was talking about this problem in general with 3D applications. So it's not unique to Revit. All 3D applications have a limited 3D space, and they limit it in different ways. Some of them prevent you from building outside of it. Some of them become less efficient, like Revit. Others, the accuracy, lose accuracy, like SketchUp. So just different things, but something has to be given up to do that.
And also, if you have a project that's gone on and you develop quite fully, and all of a sudden, hey, the variable kicked out this plot of land over here, so now we have to change a little bit where everything goes. And everything's located to a specific number, and if I move my architectural model, that problems with my MEP, so if it's all 0, 0, 0, at least you can fix what publish and move things around. And that way, it's easier to follow.
So are you using BIM 360?
We're trying to get started. Most of the projects we got are out in a few more months, so we haven't had a chance. But I'm pitching to try to move into that just because of the efficiency that I've seen from all the demos that I've seen and all the people I've talked to about it. The efficiency when it comes to the coordination and time detection is great. The whole not having to go through the trouble of exporting from Revit into the Navisworks and importing into the Navisworks and lining everything up and then making all these choices, adjusting all these settings. Glue makes it literally, I mean, it's like button, 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 done. And it automatically does it. And then one of the biggest issues is there, of course, you're coordinating your origin point. everybody must be on the same page because it's not a core problem.
Right.
But like I said, it really does streamline the workflow a lot from what I've seen. And like I said, we are trying to pitch it. Plus the fact that the cost of the software itself is not that much different than what the Navisworks per user license. I think it's actually cheaper. The Navisworks, I think Navisworks is like $200 per person. 50 was $120 per person per month for the project duration. So I see a lot of benefit in it. Again, it's a new thing, so a lot of people are still getting used to it. A lot of people haven't heard about it yet. Some of the people that I have mentioned this to, as far as engineers that we've been working with, have seem the very enthusiastic about trying it.
Right.
It's just a question of, do we have the time to actually sit down? Because it takes about a day, half a day or a day's worth of quick training to have all the engineers and us and everybody involved sit down. The architect and everybody sit down. Okay, we're going to go over it. This is how it's going to work. Practice run, and then we can move on with it. So again, we're trying to. I'm pushing to move towards that as opposed to the Navisworks. Of course, that's not always going to happen. Some people are already set in roads. That some people are set in the way they do things, so they don't want to change. That's what they're used to working with. That's what they know how to work. They've already purchased Navisworks, so I'm going to pay for other stuff. So it's going to be a while before we can just use this all the time.
But if it's a per project basis, it shouldn't be that.
Well, like I said, it all depends. It depends on who the person is. Because some engineers are going to be okay with that. They're going to be like, oh, no problem, they can do it. Others are going to be kind of stubborn. Like you said, people get set in their ways and they don't want to change out of it. They don't see the benefit in changing out of it.
Especially if the mindset is that every time you do something new, risk it.
Exactly.
So if you're not used to it, start losing touch with the capabilities of software you're using. And as they keep changing, then all of a sudden you're in a place where you're kind of good at a lot of stuff, expert at one too. And that's another factor that I've seen.
Well, in this sense, for example, we have everything we run for classification inside the office is within Revit. We don't operate Navisworks. We just don't need that much of a beefy tool, for example. So I don't envision many people using Navisworks to coordinate their models in-house. They should have better options to avoid horrible clashes. And just doing that way. So I don't see any sticking point over using BIM 360.
I mean, there really isn't. Like I said, it's just mainly you're going to have a few people that, like I said, they did buy Navisworks for their in-house back protection, and that's what they're using. So they're not going to want to necessarily pay for something else. Now, like yourself, you don't do anything. And another big issue with this is the people transitioning into Revit. If you've got an engineering firm that strictly does, CAD, they're going to use Navisworks for class protection or things like that. They're not going to use something that's fully integrated into Revit. Now, we've got firms that are transitioning into Revit or starting to use Revit now, or that are 100% Revit, and this makes perfect sense for them. So it's native within Revit, it's easier, it's faster, and it's live, potentially. Once a week, everybody uploads, and does its own coordination merging. You have one person designated, be it one like the GC would go in. All right, I'm going to run the class protection, one for the force generator, I'm going to push it out to everybody else. Now everybody has knows what they need to do, and then I think that the link, the class report actually links back directly to the Revit model, or it's capable of doing that. So you would click on the issue, and it would actually take you within your model to that point.
Yeah.
Instead of you trying to hunt it down, figure out, okay, where these two pipes at, or where's the conduit at. That's part of good. Is that for actually addressing the issue. What we did here at AU. Some people that are big proponents of Glue for what it does. It's streamlined, it integrates better with Revit. But they're finding for really complex projects, the tools aren't all there that Navisworks is. So they're actually still using Navisworks for their really complex projects that they want to have some more management tools for that coordination. So just something to be aware of. Yeah, I did not know that was actually good enough. Things like healthcare, probably that has a lot of healthcare. high-end art museum that they were saying, and this is a firm that's trying to roll out glue company-wide, but then still, you know, their BIM GUR is still sticking with Navisworks for really complex projects. You know, like glue didn't have all the management tools that he needed to organize the results. Good to know we got a big project that's coming up that I wanted to push glue on, but it might be too complex for it.
Have you talked about how you're handling licensing for that? Are you going to license it per project for the entire team, or you guys going to just assume the different project participants handle their own licensing?
Well, no, I mean, what we've done before with Navisworks is, you know, we have the license, we handle it, and then, you know, it's charged to the engineers. Okay. You know, I've been at $200 per user per month of the project. This would be, and then that's something they can turn around right into the contract. Okay. So, you know, they can write it. We're well aware of that. They can write it into the contract and have that be part of their cost. So it'd be a similar setup, because of the way that the licensing, like I said, will be managed was a certain amount per person, per user, per user per month. Right. That the project's going on. So it's like it's kind of a win-win.
They're not paying Autodesk directly and logging on the 360?
No, because the way 360 works is there's an admin who creates a project, you know, like a folder within the cloud.
Okay.
And then all the people, you know, that are part of the project, you know, it's like you, Chris, or whoever, then I send them out the emails asking to join the project.
Right.
And then from there is where they manage everything. And they, you know, they upload, like I said, the plugin that installs directly into Revit. Hit the button and it generates the model, converts it, because it does get converted. It's not, what you're seeing on the cloud is not a full Revit model. It's actually, it looks like a Navisworks model. Yeah. So, but I'm sure there is some sort of integration from Navisworks into this new software. And then from there, you know, everybody, whoever is in charge, or the admin usually will be the one who goes through and runs the flash reports, and then spits them back out to the individual engineering parties involved.
Let me ask you this. I assume that with all the partners, I mean, all the firm partners on the project, you only need to have one person per firm doing that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, and no.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, that's what I wanted to get to, but let's say, for example, you push out the report, and it's kind of like a linked DWF markup, for example. The report's in your model, it highlights whatever part of your model you have the issue. What if that person, most likely that person doing the collaboration and talking to everybody else is not the person that's going to be doing the work. So if this element is, whatever this is, this issue, shows up in the model, whoever's going to be addressing it, can they see it?
Honestly, I don't know. I haven't used the system enough. I know you guys have, so I don't know if you can add. I see what you're saying. Well, maybe we can add, okay, we have a primary contact. You're my primary contact. I send you the class report. Can I add somebody else's email to that?
No, I mean, a Revit user, for example, the mechanical designer is the one that has a problem because he's running a duct through one of his columns. Okay. All I have to do is send it back to the model and that instance, that Clash instance, gets input into my model, my central in my office, or something that only I can see.
No, I believe it works through it. It gets sent back to your central model.
Right. You're still making the change in your model that you're authoring, and then when you glue it, it's called you're sending that model back up to the coordination model to resolve it. The one issue we've run into is the integration isolates the clash in your authoring tool in Revit, but it only shows your elements. So you have to set up templates to be able to see through your link files to be able to see the elements that it's actually clashing with that you saw in glue.
I've got the video from you.
Yeah, Jason put together a video on that.
Yeah, and it was just, and it's actually, I think that he tried that almost a glitch, but they had a little bug in the actual software. It generalized like it was what it made. It would actually show you everything as opposed to just the specifics. But again, you templates can be set up, you know, to where
it's probably a limitation because it needs to be able to understand what your linked setup is. So it would have trouble doing that.
how everything's going to be set up within the model. There's some of these things, like I said, this is a work in progress as well. So there's still some adjustments that we made. Yeah, this section is when we're doing the coordination, the formats that will be provided by the individual engineers, things like that. And again, this is going to change per project. Say you're using something like glue. I mean, we're pretty much everybody's going to be working on an RBT. Somebody's going to be providing an NWC or anything like that. I'll get through this real quick. Again, this is breaking down the formats that are accepted from each different discipline. So we got the collaboration. We thought about, where everything's going to be set up. Is it going to be an FTP server? Is it going to be a server that we host where everybody can upload and download? A lot of the field guys, we've got the Wi-Fi server set up. That's mostly what our field people use. Inside the office, I use things like Box or Dropbox or things like that. It's pretty standard. Or we use an FTP if that's what the designer is actually using for this particular project, and they're providing one, so we'll use that. And then, of course, the uploading of file frequency, downloading, and things like that. That's all determined on a per project basis. I've got projects right now that are shoving stuff at us weekly, unnecessarily. But that's just the way it's set up. Which is software matrix? What is that? Actually, I did not see that until now. Okay. Yeah.
So who's using what application? We've
Okay.
got software matrices. Just rows and columns,
So it'll show what discipline is using.
Yeah, the one is going to be who the discipline consultant is, and then the other row is what is it being used for.
Okay, gotcha.
Also a good spot to see whether or not you're going to upgrade, if everybody agreed on upgrading.
Yeah, we have that in our main one that I didn't get to, but yeah, whether what version we're going to stick on, or if you're going to go to an upgrade, you got to make sure you notify everybody else, and it needs to be agreed upon.
Yeah, here's where we have that. Basically, we talk about it, hey, right off the bat when we're sitting with the, now with the kickoff and the BIM kickoff meeting or the coordination kickoff, we'll sit down and say, okay, which version are we using? Is everybody on board? Are we okay with this? Some people might be behind, and we might have to jump back and say, okay, we'll have to use 2012. But not everybody's got it. Not everybody's going to be willing to pay for the upgrade, or they don't have the upgrades.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're running into the issue. I think as the field consultants, we're seeing new tools come along each time, and we're getting held back, whether it's based on upgrade policies, waiting till a patch comes in. Every firm has a different policy, and then recently I've been hearing that the rendering capability in 2013 is not working correctly for one of our clients, so now we can't use 2013 and all the tools, until they resolve that. So it is presenting, issues. All my clients are upgrading at a different practice.
So they came back after you started working in 2013 and said they didn't use it.
Well, in some design build projects, we were actually on board before the architect, and they actually got upset that we had gone to 2013, and it said, well, we were kind of driving the ship here, so we wanted to use the latest tools that could really help us out on this particular project. It definitely made some good enhancements to the structure, and we haven't seen any things that concern us that aren't working correct. So, but they're telling us that the rendering capability is some glitches in it.
I guess it is they haven't figured out the material.
Right.
Yeah, the material is tricky. When I first looked at it.
Glitch, I mean, you can glitch.
Right.